Treasurer Mike Baird's second state budget delivered this week acknowledges there's pain. GST revenues are slowing, the budget's in deficit, fiscal discipline is the mantra. 10,000 full-time equivalent public service jobs on top of the 5,000 announced last September are to go. With a workforce of 330,000, 15,000 may not sound like much of a downsizing. But how can Mr Baird say service delivery standards will not suffer? I spoke to Treasurer Mike Baird a short time ago. Treasurer, welcome. You say Directors General of all departments and agencies will have to find the savings in payroll, cost and procurement to meet your $2.4 billion fiscal discipline target. Exactly how many involuntary redundancies can we expect?
Well, that's to be determined, Quentin. I think the important point is that the state faces a big fiscal challenge. No state government's had to deal with the reduction in revenue we have. The $5 billion lost over the forward estimates is unprecedented.
A lot of public servants watching. How many are going to have to go?
So we've taken the action and we've asked our Director Generals to hit labour expense targets. And the important thing about those is the flexibility remains with them. I mean, it's amazing, Quentin, when you look at the attrition rate across the public service. There's about 30,000 a year that just come and go from the public service. So in that context, we're saying to Director Generals, well, there's an opportunity there. I mean, there's a chance rather than re-employ 30,000, maybe on an annual basis go back to 27,500, and the target is met. I mean, that's what we're looking for.
Attrition, you hope?
Well, it's up to the Director Generals and the equivalent, and we've been upfront about this, and I think that's the important point as well. We've said that if there is no one not using all of the flexibility available, you know, whether it be attrition, retirement, part-time, looking at contractors, temps, all those sort of things, then it would be just 2,500 jobs a year. And we would be saying, but look closely at attrition and retirement and as much flexibility as you can give to meet an expense target in a very difficult time.
If a Director General or an agency head says, look, I'm sorry, I can't meet this target without compromising service delivery, what happens to that Director General?
Well, that's why I think one of the unique things about this is we've said to the Director Generals and obviously the individual ministers overseeing the departments and agencies, we want to maintain the focus on the customer, on the service we're delivering, but at the same stage, you know, everyone's got a role to play in meeting the expense targets we have because of the loss of revenue. I just don't want to be in a position that we set New South Wales on a course that we're going to be borrowing over the long term to pay wages. And that is not something that's sustainable and shouldn't be done.
You say $1.24 billion in programs will be cut across government. Which programs?
Well, that's, again, a matter for the individual ministers and the agencies. There's an individual target that they've been allocated.
Well, will you announce them? Will you announce them? I'm sorry, everybody's a bit sceptical about this because you say you're going to be absolutely transparent, but there's no detail here.
Well, I mean, the Minister for Education announced one yesterday, the HSC advice line, back in 1997, a good example, back in 1990...
$656,000 saved.
Well, back in 1997, there was 39,000 phone calls that came to the HSC advice line. Last year, it got over 600, about 630. It's currently costing about $275 a call. The Minister has decided that's a program to stop. And that's just an example that you will see across various ministers and agencies as programs come and go to meet that program saving target.
Why don't you get rid of the regional relocation grant? The opposition says that's $7,000 to people to move out to the country towns. Obviously, there's no substantive take-up. There have only been 636 applications for a projected 10,000. Will you scrap it?
Well, we've very much supported the strategy of getting people into the regions. It's not just the regional relocation grants, but it's the allocation of jobs, our Jobs Action Plan. We've allocated jobs there. Out of the infrastructure that comes in, we've got a fund where 30% of every dollar that comes into that from Restart New South Wales goes to the region. So jobs and infrastructure is important for the regions.
You're not going to scrap it. You are introducing 148 new speed cameras, lifting fines by 12% and expect to collect $180 million more in revenue. Will you now confirm what the public already suspects? Speed cameras are primarily about revenue raising.
No, well, they're not. The Roads Minister's been very clear on this, Quentin, and he is, through a range of initiatives, ensured that the issue of entrapment...
Poor Duncan Gay, the Roads Minister, looks like roadkill. He's been vilifying speed cameras for years, to great effect for the coalition, but now you're introducing more.
No, he was very clear. He has argued strongly both in the Cabinet and publicly that entrapment is no longer acceptable in this state. that as money is raised on those mobile speed cameras, they go back into safety. That's exactly what he's doing. And in a broad context and a challenge of what do you do, Quentin?
You've already projected the revenue increase from these.
When you are facing a $5 billion revenue hit, what do you do? And we've made tough decisions in relation to expenses, not popular in many instances, but the right thing to do. We've also made some of these decisions around fines. Now, the fines do bring us back into line with some of the other states, and it's just one of the additional decisions we've had to make to bring us back into a surplus position.
You say there's more nurses and police coming, frontline services will be quarantined, but you haven't quarantined TAFE teachers or firefighters, so they're not frontline then?
Well, we made strong commitments in the election, and we're very happy to reconfirm. I mean, teachers, nurses and police. We have protected those, and so we should. Across the rest of government, everyone, and I have to say this, Quentin, I think around the cabinet table, every single one of my colleagues has said, listen, we face this unbelievable challenge. The $5 billion lost, we all accept responsibility to play a role in it. And that's exactly what they're doing.
So, TAFE teachers, sorry.
Not at all. What we have said to the Director Generals, as we've explained earlier, look at the departments that you have, look at the things like attrition and retirement, maintain the focus on delivering the services we are, and we expect, in cooperation with both the Minister and the agencies, to be able to do that.
Now, you've lifted the rents from next March on public housing tenants on the stated justification that maintenance costs would be going up because of the carbon tax, but you're increasing the rents at the time when the poor tenants are about to receive their compensation package from the Gillard government for the impacts of the carbon tax on cost of living. The tenants are about to get a break and you take it away from them. How cynical is that?
Well, I find this argument amazing, and I've heard the opposition today on this. There is a very simple proposition: get rid of the carbon tax, and there is no change.
Come on,
there is no change, there is no simpler way to put it, Quentin, because the carbon tax is the issue. I mean, Canberra can talk about levels of compensation, overcompensation, forget it. And for them to stand up today and point the finger at the O'Farrell government is outrageous. They should just simply go back, go to Parliament, get rid of the carbon tax, and there is no change whatsoever.
Justify the increase in housing rents.
Well, the Minister's been very clear on this. We are dealing with the impost that has come from Canberra. Now, Canberra, it's all in their hands.
How do you quantify that? Because you're looking at the maintenance costs and the procurement costs for the maintenance of public housing.
Well, but everywhere...
You've picked a figure out of the air, haven't you?
No, everywhere you turn, Quentin, the steamroller of the carbon tax is coming to you, and we are seeing that today. We have seen additional costs come in the public housing sector. You're seeing it already in relation to our hospitals and schools. It is a tax that is hitting us everywhere, and we're going to see more and more of this as time goes on. And I think today it's a good reminder on this issue on why Canberra should get rid of it. If they get rid of it, there is no change.
You're spending $3.3 billion on one rail line, the North West Rail Line, yet only $1.4 billion on the Pacific Highway duplication. And maintaining this rhetorical standoff with the federal government, surely the priority should be the Pacific Highway duplication to get it finished by 2016 and to save lives.
Well, we are very committed to the Pacific Highway, and despite the challenges that we faced...
North West Rail, one rail line versus a duplication that would save lives.
Well, I think, Quentin, any government has a range of infrastructure commitments. We've committed to the North West Rail and actually delighted and proud to be delivering it for the people. The people that sat in North West Sydney under the former government, it was supposed to be completed by 2010.
I know it's a commitment you've made, but it's a question of priority, given the circumstances we're now in, the Pacific Highway people are now in.
And I think what we've said, Quentin, despite the challenge we've faced in this budget, we've actually met our commitment for the Pacific Highway. There is a 20% commitment from the state government towards the construction cost. We're asking Canberra to keep their money on the table. It will go a long way to completing it in 2016, and indeed, if they just shifted the Parramatta to Epping Railway money that's out in their forward estimates and they put that in the Pacific Highway to meet their commitment, it'll be done. And we would applaud the Infrastructure Minister and the Prime Minister if they made that decision overnight.
Treasurer, thanks very much.
Thanks, Gwen.